It's not in the hamper.
Hey, Mom, I'm sorry. I have to go.
Mom.
Yes, Apple. Robbie!
Everything's okay, right?
Fear so bitter, death is hardly more severe. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, Holly's a real gourmet chef, too. We knew who loved pie the most.
You're drooling.
I was the one. Those two kids in the paper. I ran them off.
My name is Dean Kapsalis. I'm the writer and director and editor of the film Swerve. And The Swerve is my first feature film.
I'm Azura Skye, and I am the lead actor in the film The Swerve.
I wanted to talk a little bit about just the idea of this film and how it came about. Dean, what was your motivation for writing something like this? It's a very deep thinking piece, and it's a very it's one of those neat films that has like a slow burn. And I'm kind of curious what your thought process was in creating something like this.
Being raised by, women who were very strong and had been through a lot in their lives. And as I grew and matured, I began to see that they had endured, mental and physical abuse, and were dealing with forms of mental illness. Although they hid it largely from the family as best they could. I mean, just so that it wouldn't come across to the kids and so forth. And then beyond that, I think I developed a really, strong admiration for books like, Gothic novels, and from Edgar Allan Poe to like Madame Bovary, who dealt with these great, female characters, and Greek tragedies and Shakespeare. And I think it all sort of came out in when I started writing this. And it was all centered around Holly. I created this character of Holly, and everything else developed around this character. So, that was my aim, to have a very strong point of view through this character.
When I read the script, I immediately recognized Holly as really the role of a lifetime. I mean, what an opportunity. I had never had a role that good before, that challenging. I don't know that I'll ever have one again. But I immediately recognized it as really an actor's dream. I think you can, go through a whole lifetime and a whole career without ever getting something that great and harrowing to sink your teeth into. So yeah, I just saw it as a tremendous opportunity, a scary one for sure. It was very daunting, but I find it rare in these kind of work situations that you get the opportunity to be scared and to be daunted. And when those come along, you better jump in, because I find that they're the most worthwhile experiences.
How much of being on the screen in every single scene and every single shot played a factor in determining you taking this role or not?
Part of the scariness was just that physically it demanded a lot. She is in every scene of the movie, almost every shot. It had been a long time since I just worked at that level, being on set all day every day. Usually I do supporting roles, so I'll come in and do a day here, a day there, week here, week off. But Holly was every day, from the time I went to bed, from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. It was like treading water in an icy pond. It was a lot, yeah, but such a gift.
But there is an arc to this character that is vast, and I'm thinking in terms of having in your process, did you kind of look at that linearly, or did you because you don't shoot it linearly, obviously, so how did you figure out in your process when to up it and when to lower it? Was it just going back to your instincts a little bit?
Well, actually, we did shoot this movie almost entirely in sequence.
Wow.
Yeah, which was so rare, and also such a gift. So the progression of the character truly did build day by day.
Was she a tough character to get out of your mind after the fact?
No, she wasn't. I was afraid that she would be. The way I work, it's not by choice, but I've always left my characters at work, even between setups and between takes. When the director says cut, I always come back to being Azura. And when I leave at the end of the day, I really leave the character behind. Like I said, that's not a choice. That's just how it happens for me. And I feel fortunate in that. But Holly was such an intense and grueling person to be. And I had never quite put myself through something that emotional for work. So I was a little worried that she might stick around, but thankfully she did not.
Yeah, Azura was correct in saying that the film was almost shot chronologically, and we did that. The producer, I credit Tommy Minix with that, because he actually rewrote the. And this is, I can say this now, but he rewrote the AD's scheduling to accommodate that. We thought it was really important to be able to do that, also for makeup and costuming, to convey the mood and the characterization as best that we could. It was for such a small budget. It was, we didn't have a big crew. And for so much that we had to do, it was a very complicated film, and it was really important that, for Azura and for me to be able to be able to follow the character and story on a day-to-day basis.
How many days did it shoot?
Since we didn't have I directed all the B-roll as well. I think ultimately came to 23 days.
Wow. Something about these types of films that really matters a lot is the supporting cast. I mean, without, terms like Zach Rand, for example,
yeah.
and guys like Bryce and those folks, without them playing off of the Holly character, it doesn't sell, right? And then that's the hard aspect of getting something psychological like this over. And that,
yeah.
And so talk a little bit about what they gave for both Azura and Dean, what they gave you and what they meant to you in terms of that respect.
I thought our supporting cast in this movie was just so stellar. There really wasn't a weak link in the whole bunch. It was really a privilege and a pleasure to work with each and every one of them. And, when you work with great actors, you don't have to even act. You just kind of, just react to them doing their thing. And, yeah, Ashley Bell, Zach Rand, Bryce Pinkham, they just... Yeah, it was such pivotal roles too. I mean, they are supporting roles, but such well-rounded, well-crafted characters.
Yeah, casting was it was difficult. in a way. I mean, the casting director is fantastic. Adrienne Stern. She was great, just really great to work with. Very personable and not, she had her say when she thought maybe we were with what we were looking for, and I was specific too. I mean, I was very specific, and we talked to a lot of people, and I kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a, I don't know, kind of a, it's in, you feel it in the gut, like I did when somebody was right, somebody was not right. And as soon as I met Zach, I said I have to meet him personally. He was in, New York area, and met up with him, and I knew within the first few minutes whether he'd be right for it. And we sat and talked for a couple of hours, I think, and just went over things. And I was like, he can do this, no problem. And same with Bryce. I just, I didn't know Bryce as a performer, but I saw everything that I could. And Ashley, I knew, not personally, but I knew her work, and I met her, and she was just great. And it was very, very important to be able to have a contrast of actors that played with and against Holly. And everything in the film is based on mirroring of characters and as well. And so it was really, really important to do that. Once we had Azura, then I knew how to play against her and with her. And I would get messages like, "Who are you casting as Rob? Who are you casting?" And it was
From
very
me?
funny. Yeah. And I understood. And she's like, "Oh, have you thought of so and so?" And I'm like, "I'll be quiet." And and it's like, it's like I'm busy. But it was an enormous amount of work. It was one of the most important things to try and get right. And all the actors, the main cast, they've been acting since they were kids. So I didn't think they were going to have any problem. And the way that I direct is specific, and I tried to be sort of playful, but I just had an intuitive feeling that they all knew what they were doing, and we discussed it beforehand. And I think they knew eventually that they weren't in any danger. I wasn't going to, mess them up psychologically. I don't play games like that.
Yeah.
And movie sets are, they're very focused. And the movie was so complicated to begin with that I was just very focused on, making sure everybody was comfortable and on target with what we needed to do. And they loved, as actors, they're magical creatures. I've said this to Azura, and they love to sink their teeth into things. And they were a lot of fun.
Did you guys do any rehearsals or anything? Was there any time that you guys spent together beforehand?
Not that much. A little bit. Like I sat with Azura in her hotel room, and we went over scenes and talked, and she had questions. And at first, I think it took a few days to sort of figure out that that she trusted me, and and I was like, we trusted each other, and we were able to do things. And she got into a rhythm of what I was going for, and that's completely understandable. See, like, what is this guy doing? Why is he doing things this way? What's going on? Zach, none. Zach had no rehearsal time. In fact, Zach showed up, and I immediately threw him into a scene. And I said, we can walk through it as to block it, and you're going to go through it like this. Azura doesn't like to do, didn't need to do a lot of rehearsal, because it would, not spoil the mood. And we just threw him in. And then he came up to me afterwards. I think it was the scene where you run up, he runs up to you in the parking lot, Azura, right?
Yeah, that's the scene I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I had him running back and forth, and it was hot. It was in the summer.
Oh, it's so hot.
Yeah, it was intense. And then he did it, and I made him do, I don't know how many takes, not that many, but he did it, and he was, by the end of it, he was just sweating. And then he came up to me, and I was like, "Hey, good job." And then he said, "Do you think next time that you know, you could give me, you don't throw me into such an intense moment. I was like, no, it was totally intentional. And you did a great job. If I had you think too much about it, you would have been acting. And I was like, you really did, you know, it was perfect. He didn't have a chance to overthink it. I just said, oh, you're doing this now. And he was like, what? And boom, you know.
Sometimes I really like working that way. I'm actually someone who, I'm not a huge fan of rehearsal, unless you're doing a play or something, of course.
Right.
But obviously discussions are necessary. But I find if you rehearse something too much, it kind of starts looking rehearsed. And it kind of starts sounding like you've said it a few times. So, and not always, but there really can be something to like those first few takes and that freshness. You know, so I'm always like, well, let's rehearse, but let's just rehearse on camera because you never know what we might get.
Plus for you, most of this is all here in the face. It's all internal, you know, so there's a lot of that, and that's hard to rehearse, I would imagine.
Yeah, and to be honest, I really don't. Even when I do rehearse, I tend to kind of walk through it, you know, do it at about 10-15% because you want to save it.
One of the more fascinating aspects of this film, and really does it justice in terms of getting that those moments with you know, Holly's reactions and her turn and everything like that, is the way it's shot. I mean, this is very interesting. I really love it's not wide. It's kind of a more of a medium, you know, aspect ratio that a lot of these things come into, and there's not a ton of, there's some close-ups, but there's not a ton. And it's very interesting because you get this there's like this aura around her from that, and you worked with Daryl Pittman on the cinematography, and I'm kind of curious how much you guys talked about that, and was that kind of the design, or was that kind of a happy accident that they came out like that?
No, it was designed. It was designed. We the first thing I wanted to nail was the atmosphere of the what I was trying to convey. I was like, you know, this is Holly's show. This is around Holly, and this is what I told Azura. I was like, this is around the character of Holly. And then it was about how to bring in certain colors and where would the colors originate from. In art direction, it was blue and green. And then in lighting, and especially there was some blue and green in the lighting, and then later in the film, how to bring in yellow. So we talked about things like that, and also I wanted to shoot in the scope, widescreen aspect ratio, and why. And you'll see in a lot in some of the shots like how it alienates Holly and brings her. I'll put her in one side of the frame, and then, you know, I'll have like an emptiness on the other side, or I'll pit characters that way. Or objects. Sometimes I'll have her dead center. It was those are the conversations that we had, and it was very, very. He made a joke about it. I don't know if Azura knows this, but there was a light that he made that he put on top because I was insistent that the eyes on the actors be lit a certain way, and that you could see the points of light, the catch lights in their eyes. And so that was really important, even in the night, in the dark side.
He did a lovely job, Daryl. He did a beautiful job.
Now, Azura, I'm curious too. How much for you, as in your process as an actor, does that free you up to have? You know, it's not enclosing you in a space. You kind of, I mean, you were boxed in, but you had a little bit of range, and I'm curious if that helped your process at all.
Yes, it is nice being able to move around a little. I got along with Daryl really well, and pretty instantly, I felt like I was in good hands with him. You know, you can turn in the most brilliant performance of all time, and if it looks like shit, it doesn't really matter. You know, I don't think a mark was ever put down on this movie. I could be wrong.
A few times.
Not
okay. You didn't need them. In fact, you would sort of shoo away the AD who was putting like marks down. You're like, I don't need those. But we put them down if there were like, when we had, it was kind of like a dance when you and Ashley toward the end, and when we had the three of you together. For focus, I wanted it specific, and I think you guys, any of you rarely needed them. I mean, if any at all. Zach never did.
We didn't use them much.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of nice to use the space and feeling
Yeah.
less restricted.
You just don't have time to improvise, and there's there's like some natural light in daytime, but everything was lit. Sometimes the shots were set at night and we shot it in the day, and sometimes vice versa. So that's filmmaking, right?
Right. Along those lines, what is it about independent film that you guys really cherish? What is it that you love about doing it in this kind of, in this nice little guerrilla style?
Well, you know what? Even I think even at the highest budget, there really isn't anything glamorous about movie making. But I find with these little indies, it does kind of, they're kind of, especially when you go away on location, I find, and everyone's taken away from their homes, you can get this really special kind of summer camp vibe. And I feel like you connect with people. I suppose something that makes independent filmmaking so special is just that singular vision. When you get into bigger movies, oftentimes there are so many cooks in the kitchen and there's so many opinions. But with these smaller movies, not all the time, but more times than not, I find it is single vision, or maybe, a pairing of visions. But it's scaled down and it's much more contained, and it oftentimes feels much more personal.
She's not kidding. It's kind of a mix of misery and love. I mean, it's amazing in many ways that how do I put this in a nutshell? I mean, for filmmakers, it's like, you go out there and it's like, how do you do this? And I spent a long time developing this. It's like, we're going to go out and do this. And it's like we could write a book on how we did this, and maybe it would help other people. There are other books like this they could read that are wonderful, that were helpful to me. But until you're actually there, nobody really understands it until you've actually done something like this. And like, I've done shorts and films and music videos and et cetera, and they do not compare to the level of focus and intensity that you have to go through physically, yes, but mostly it's mentally that really is very, very taxing. And it's great. I love it. I wouldn't have given it up for anything, but people don't really understand that, and it is not glamorous. It is not a glamorous thing.
It's grueling.
It's grueling. It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. My mind, tension. There's tension. I mean, you're fighting against the clock. Mostly it's like, there's a lot of technical errors. There are planes and people and just things that interfere, and bugs, and try shooting outside at night, in the middle of the night, in the woods, with in the middle of nowhere with the crew, and you've only got a few hours till dawn, and there are animals and giant insects coming at you, and
lions and
it's a lot.
tigers and bears.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot. It can be a lot, and I was having a great time, but it's also, you also feel like you're being stretched on a medieval rack too,